All
All right.
You see the
I
icon?
do.
All
I
right,
do.
here we go.
All right, let's go ahead and advance to the next slide. Greetings. My name is Brent Elrod. I'm a national program leader with USDA's National Institute of Food and Agriculture, joined here today by my colleagues Sydney Turner, Holly Boyd, and Stephen Evans. Each of us are pleased that you were able to join us today on behalf of the State Departments of Agriculture in response to the call for funding to support Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network. Next slide. Today's meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the NIFA website once we've got it 508 compliant. We've also asked, if you haven't already, to include your name and email address in the chat. That way, if we make any changes to the RFA, we'll know who to notify, since you're the ones that are likely working on the responses. In addition, you can type your questions into the chat. We've got 3 designated Q&A periods during the meeting today, and we'll use those to read them in the order that they're received. So feel free as they come up just to go ahead and type them in there, and that way we'll be able to capture them. Here's today's agenda. On the program side, I'm going to just give a real brief overview of NIFA. I expect most of you are familiar with us in the land grant system, but just a couple slides. Just a few slides also about the context that we find ourselves in related to farm stress. And then we'll get into the details related to the program. And you see the various categories there. We'll take a break after we complete that portion and do our first Q&A session. And then we'll lead into the discussion led by Holly and Stephen related to the administrative requirements of the grant. We'll follow that with a dedicated Q&A session and then step into the application process in the final third of the meeting, and then end with our final opportunities for Q&A. We intend to accomplish that all in the next hour, so we'll move forward quickly through the slides. As I mentioned, we are the federal extramural funding agency on behalf of the United States Department of Agriculture. We were created through the Food Conservation and Energy Act of 2008. Our predecessor is long before that. Our funding in this past year was about 1.8 billion, and it includes both competitive and capacity funding. You see our mission there to support agricultural research, education, extension, and our vision. Next slide. And there, just a little more detail on the 3 types of activities that we support. And in this particular instance, the category of funding that is going to support this particular initiative is in the extension category. Next. So now just briefly about farm stress. Again, this is information I don't need to spend a lot of time with this group on. You are intimately familiar. In fact, you are right there in the states that are addressing some of these biggest challenges. And as you know, back in 2008 was the original funding for a farm and ranch stress assistance network. There was no original appropriation tied to the authorization, so it went unfunded until the 2018 Farm Bill, at which time we began to stand up the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network. Next slide. I've captured some of the citations. These slides will also be made available on our website in conjunction with the webinar, and so you can follow those links if you need to for any citations that may support your particular plan that you put forward in response to this call. Next slide. I just want to point out some of these last bullets here because we do have research from our colleagues at Centers for Disease Control and Prevention demonstrating that people in rural areas are more likely to take their own lives. And ultimately, the funding that's being provided for the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network is to address those stressors that may lead a producer or a family member to consider harming themselves or others. So while we'll never know if we ultimately are successful in preventing somebody from taking their own life or harming another, we can know that the programs and services and supports that we put in place have contributed to reducing farm stress and hopefully getting somebody to that place that they can get help before a worst case scenario were to arise. You're also intimately familiar with the immediate stresses associated with finances related to the multi-billion-dollar losses associated with weather disasters. With climate change, we know that we're going to continue to see these based upon the latest science. And so again, being thinking about how our programs address some of those concerns with producers, certainly one of the eligible categories of service that you could offer up in response to this call. And we find ourselves in the midst of a global pandemic. While a growing portion of the population is vaccinated against COVID-19, we know that there is considerable hesitancy, especially in rural areas of our country. And so we're going to have continued work to do for some time to ensure and encourage producers, family members, communities they live in, to encourage uptake of the vaccine so that we can ensure that we're getting up to that level that CDC is needed to reach herd immunity and allow us to go back and about our daily lives more comfortably than we have been for the last year plus. And we'll talk a little bit more about the disaster declaration when we reach that slide. Just want to mention here too that this is one leg of what may be a 4 or 5-legged stool. And I just want to mention briefly that NIFA, our partners within the land grant system and cooperative extension service, are also engaged in this space. But we're also partnering across USDA and with others in federal government to ensure that we've got a whole of government approach to this challenge. So you see links to dedicated programs that have been provided support, other funding opportunities that are offered through our agency, including the Rural Health and Safety Education Program, which is fiscal year 21 call, closes today. I think some of you are also familiar with the Training and Technical Assistance Program that Farm Service Agency has been offering in partnership with NIFA, the land grant system, to pilot training that helps field staff in offices of FSA engage with producers and connect them then with resources and supports if they encounter an issue where they're concerned about that individual's well-being. And then, as I mentioned, the existing network that's being stood up, we have 4 regions. You saw those lead investigators for the networks in the respective regions in the information in the RFA, and we'll repeat those again in a later slide. The eligibility, each of you hopefully represents one of the eligible entities from the 50 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and American Samoa and Guam. We have, I see we got 61 participants on. We're anticipating making 56 awards, so hopefully that there's one at least from every SDA. And if you don't see your colleagues here from your neighboring states, encourage them to make sure that they're going to take advantage of this opportunity. Next. So I said 56 awards is what we anticipate making. Each state may request up to $500,000. I know a number of you have written and called us asking specifically what will the period of performance be. We're asking you to make it for 12 months initially. And so the start date would be 9/1, September 1 of 21 to August 31 of 22. The terms and conditions of those awarded will also allow you to take a no-cost extension up to 12 months through 8/31 of 23. But as you put your state plans together, do it for a 12-month period. And the reason that we're asking for that is because of the information related to the public health emergency. Next. Here it is. So the Secretary of HHS, in this case, Barrera, may continue the public health emergency declaration that's been declared. It was most recently renewed on April 15th. It can be renewed each time for a 90-day period. So we'll be seeing July 1 as the next likely renewal. And we do not anticipate again anytime soon where this health emergency will be declared as ended. But when that happens, that will trigger a date for to be wrapping up services that you're offering under the existing funding. Next. All right, so this information is all included in the RFA. I've highlighted a couple of the elements, but I do want to just spend just a bit of time here because I know there's been some questions. We're asking State Departments of Ag to expand or sustain stress assistance programs to those individuals you see, and we're taking a very broad understanding: farming, ranching, other ag-related occupations that could include forestry, for example. There's two specific larger categories of service: programs that use funds to initiate, expand, or sustain programs that provide ag behavioral health counseling and referral through these various forms of assistance: farm telephone helplines and websites, training, including training programs and workshops for the following: those advocates that may be working with the individuals who are engaged in farming, as well as other individuals and entities that may assist individuals who are engaged, so or are in crisis. Support groups and outreach activities, including dissemination of information and materials. So you'll see that this is a fairly broad suite of services that can be offered through this grant. And you'll also see the words initiate, expand, or sustain. And so in this case, we're taking a broad interpretation based upon what your states may already be offering or have discussed offering to ensure that we're going to be as flexible as possible to encourage you to put a state plan forward that will potentially be up to that full amount of 500,000 to include these services in your state in partnership with folks that may already be doing them, or others that you have relationships with, you know, that they can successfully bring them to bear during the time of the available funding. And then you also see the second category. This is specific to the FRSAN-SDA language: any state initiatives in existence as of December 27th, 2020, and identified in the state plan that provides stress assistance for such individual. So what that means is there's something different than 1A, B, C, D that your state was doing as of December 27th that could also complement 1A, B, C, D. If you have additional questions about that, we'll entertain them when we get to the chat. Next slide. In addition, SDAs are encouraged to use the funds to support eligible programs, these are the same ones that are listed in the Farm Bill language. Indian tribes, as you see, and we got a definition there based upon the US Code, state cooperative extension services, and non-governmental organizations. We would expect in almost all states, you've already got these relationships established, and where there is existing partnerships that you can utilize and build upon, we are highly encouraging that. In addition, for those of you that have states where you have 1890 institutions, those are historically Black colleges and universities. The 1994s, those are the tribal colleges, and or HSIs, Hispanic serving colleges and universities. We encourage you to also partner with them, again, if in relation to the available suite of services. Next slide. So I mentioned we've got the network that has been stood up since 2018. We competitively funded these four regions, these entities for fiscal years 20 through 22 with the funding that was authorized in the Farm Bill, up to 10 million annually, split equally between the four regions. You see in the Northeast, the National Young Farmers Coalition, Martin Lemos is the project director, and his email is there. I encourage you, if this information is in the RFA, but if you want to take out your phones and get a screenshot, also just to know which states are listed in one region. We know there's sometimes West Virginia can be in the Northeast or in the South, depending on what the categorization is. Similarly with some of the border states. Southern region, University of Tennessee, Heather Sedges and her email. In the North Central region, Josie Rudolphi at the University of Illinois is in the lead role. And then Don McMorrin in Washington State University in the West. I've heard from each of these individuals in many instances that some of you have already reached out directly to them. So that's one option. You may also reach out to your colleagues in your corresponding states that may already be part of the network. So whatever is your preferred mechanism, the key piece here, and it's highlighted there, is we want to ensure program effectiveness and we want to reduce duplication of efforts. Congress is going to ask, and for the reports, you've seen that, and we want to be able to demonstrate to them that we were proactive upfront, ensuring that we were building on existing work, coming alongside and complementing it where possible, and avoiding duplication. Worst case scenario in all this is that somebody falls through the cracks and we miss them and they take their life. we'll get called on the carpet, and we want to be able to respond in a way that demonstrates that we were working together, and that as a result, we're going to do better to ensure that that doesn't happen in the future. Next slide. All right, I've dropped this in early just because I do want to emphasize it here, and I will repeat it back in section 3 related to the application process. But this is your project narrative, your state plan, and it's not to exceed 2 pages. What we recognized is that we wanted to make this as uh, easy as possible for you to be able to put your proposals in, and for us to get the funding out to you as quickly as possible. We've got a crisis with folks. Anecdotally, we're hearing of increased risks to producers and family members prior and associated with the pandemic. And so we want to be able to get those funds out and be sure that services are reached as quickly as possible. So this is just one example of what your state plan should look like. I just used Wisconsin as an example here. You would fill in your own state. And then in this case, it should be the primary point of contact who's going to be responsible for delivery on the grant. So don't list your commissioner or your secretary here. Instead, list if you're the one that's going to be the POC, it's going to be held accountable when that we want to learn what's happening in your state. That's whose name should be listed there in the blocks. And this is, go on back, please. Yeah, thanks. So this is where you would list the specific activity. And so it should correspond to the suite of services that were listed on the previous slides and are included in the RFA. So in this case, training workshops, just an example here, just pulling it out of thin air. It doesn't correspond to anything. 4 training workshops reaching a total of 200 individuals in 4 regions of the state. And in this particular instance, you're going to collaborate with the University of Wisconsin Cooperative Extension to do that. And the period for the workshops is going to be, as you get started, October 1, conclude June 30, 22, and they're budgeting it out at 50K for that amount. Again, just an example, but you'll need to then have the corresponding support for this in terms of a subaward support letter in the accompanying information, and we'll talk more about that in the actual application package. But again, with the summary abstract, the lead in, this piece should be no more than 2 pages. When you report out, we're going to expect you to report against those category of services that you have listed, so that we've got an easy way of being able to check back against what you have suggested you're going to do with what was actually accomplished. Again, I'm going to give a preview of the reporting piece. It's going to get discussed more in the administrative requirements, but I wanted to specifically point to the programmatic pieces, which are interim and annual progress reports that we'll be reviewing, and then a final report that's going to be required no later than 180 days or 6 months after the public health emergency ends. So it will be the Secretary of HHS that will make the determination when the health emergency is over. And at that time, then it's going to start a 6-month clock for you to get a final report to us about the services and supports that are offered. Does that mean that the services and supports have to immediately end? The answer to that is no. You'll have your subawards in place. You'll have the opportunities to continue to complete those tasks. What will happen at that point is that you shouldn't really start any new services. So at that point, you're just going to continue and close out the work that's already underway. We will notify you of an exact due date, so we'll learn that public health emergency end date the same time you do probably. And at that point, we'll just send something out with formal and with some reminders about, beginning to close down the work under the existing funding. Next slide. All right, so you've got this information as well in your RFA. We heard you that you wanted some additional time to put proposals together. We normally allow about 30 days. We've given you all 60 days, and part of that is to ensure that you've kind of done the due diligence at the state level, who's doing what, where, when, and how you can complement those efforts. So in this case, everything has to come through grants.gov, and we ask that you follow all the instructions that are included in the RFA and the grants.gov application guide. Sometimes folks don't click on that link and download those additional instructions, and it ends up potentially being problematic. So follow both. I know this will be the first time that many of you have submitted to us, not the first time to USDA. But as a result, there may be processes that are slightly different from what you've become accustomed, and we want to make sure nothing trips you up. Next. All right, so let's see what we've got. I'm going to ask Sydney to read questions aloud, but as she's doing that, you can type new questions in, and let's see if we can answer those for you.
All right, I'm trying to scroll through here and okay, here we go. That's where the emails stop coming in. And the first question I see is, do you want letters of support or collaboration from our regional FRSANs?
And I see the second part of that question, does that mean only from the leads or other entities involved? I think in this particular instance, that there should be uh, again, who's going to do what work. If it should align with who's being asked to do the specific work. So if it's the specific tribal organization within your state, then we would want that letter of support and subaward directly to them. If you're going to work through the regional leads, for them to provide, say, the website or the telephone helpline or the information and dissemination, then that should the funding should support that effort, and then the letter of support should come directly from that individual. I mean, from that entity.
All right, there's another question. Will the slides be sent? This recording will be made available on our website after it is done meeting the 508 compliance. The next question I see here is, do you have a list of organizations in our states that are working on this program so we can coordinate our efforts?
So in that particular instance, that's where I would encourage you to reach out to the regional lead, and then they can connect you back with the states, the participants from their state that are engaged in the network. That may not be a comprehensive list, and this is again where we would like to ensure that we are reaching everybody as much as possible in terms of the population served. And so if you find that there's a gap area, then that's where you'd explore a new opportunity.
Next question. The RFA seems to highlight and emphasize train the trainer. Just to clarify, is training and programming direct to farmers eligible?
Yes, training direct to farmers, producers, family members is certainly eligible.
Next question. If doing a new initiative, can direct services provided to farmers other than support groups be included?
The answer to that is also yes. So, one example might be a farm management training where you're talking about risk management principles, and so you're talking about shoring up the producer's bottom line. In that particular instance, what you need to do is be able to demonstrate how that ties back to a secure financial bottom line leads to less financial stress, and so make that case.
Next question. Is there a need for diversity in the components of the plan, or is it okay for one or two large activities?
This again should tie to what the state sees as its need. So if there is in this particular instance, one or two large activities that it's going to encompass, maybe you're going to do a blanket wide campaign for your state, and you're going to put up billboards. So in that particular instance, one or two large activities would certainly be appropriate. What we'd like you to do is to be thinking again what can be accomplished in the length of time that the funds are available, but then also what can be sustained beyond that. And so is that then partnerships that are going to continue the work even if there may not be additional funding provided under this particular call.
All right. Next question, stress prevention being more proactive versus addressing stress and being reactive. Can programming on getting a better handle on financing be eligible? This is not stress specific, but finances are a big stressor as one example.
Yeah, I guess I just anticipated that question without seeing it and answered it just previously. So the short answer is yes.
Are voucher programs eligible, for example, vouchers for mental health professional services? Also, how about travel reimbursement for rural patients who need to travel to see a mental health provider?
Holly, I'm just going to ask there if you can jump in on that one. If there's, again, I think it ties to the state plan. And I guess if they justify the travel in the budget narrative, is that going to be acceptable?
It would be acceptable if it promotes the scope of work, then it's allowable. If it's used as an incentive to get people to participate, that would not be. But as far as the travel needed to go see the provider, that can be built into a budget.
Thank you.
Next question, if launching a PSA campaign, could funds be used for the making of the video and then for outreach events to screen?
Yes, and I with the caveat, I think you just heard from Holly that there can't be incentives for folks to go to the screening.
If the plan is for 12 months, but the public health emergency ends sooner, who will that be addressed?
I'm guessing Sharon may be that optimist that's in the group, and we need them. So in this particular instance, it's going to be a 12-month period of performance, and we're going to put the funds in your accounts once you have successfully completed the submission and the review process and ensured that you've passed the muster with our awards management division. And in that case, you're going to have the 12-month period of performance to draw against for those funds. Holly, again, you can correct me if I'm overstating that.
Nope, I think you're on point.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I think, Aaron, that was just the rest of your question you were getting in there. So any IRB requirements before releasing funds?
So these are extension only funds. So in this particular instance, we're not anticipating human subjects issues. So the short answer should be no. And again, we would just discourage submissions that are looking at any kind of human subjects activity in terms of the IRB. That's institutional review board.
Okay. Most stress in agriculture is either financial low prices for products or external stressors out of control of the farming community. What efforts are being taken to help reduce indebtedness for the ag community to relieve this major stress?
Well, we could spend the remainder of the time on this one. I can just cite, there's a number of programs that NIFA supports, Extension Risk Management Education, that provides sub-awards to states to work with producers specifically around this issue. We know some of our capacity funds support ag and natural resource agents that are doing this work. And certainly this is part of the effort around farm business management benchmarking to also put tools in the hands of producers so that they can understand what their cost inputs are going to be and where their likelihood of success. Again, Mark, depending on what state you're in, I would encourage you to reach out to the regional lead and they can connect you back to the state and certainly the land grants and extension service who are doing work in this space.
All right, next question I see. Once the application is approved, can we start work or do we need to wait till 9/1?
So technically you can start work whenever you like. We're going to release the funding as soon as we can get our due diligence completed. My understanding, and again, Holly, you can help out here, that you'll have 90 days pre-award cost for activities that are specifically listed in your state plan and align with your budget.
That's correct. You can get that pre-award spending going and buy any kind of equipment or anything that's necessary if you need to do film production or things of that nature. You can use those funds to accomplish those goals.
All right, there are no other questions that I see at this time.
All right, well, in that case, I'm going to hand it over to Holly and Stephen. Thanks very much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Evans. I'll be talking to you about some of the principles that we need to cover. Basically, in your allowable expenses, everything should go along with the 2 CFR 200 subpart E, which is our cost principles that we have to go by. Everything needs to be reasonable, necessary, and allocable. You've heard Holly already talk about something being reasonable and allocable. In here, of course, you know, salaries, travel, consultant, subcontracts, materials. These are all items that we normally get with our, you know, applications. Of course, you can also see the rest of them, but I'm not going to read everything to you, so we can go to the next slide. But what is important is those 3 points: reasonable, necessary, and allocable. In here is unallowable. And of course, you already heard about incentives. You can't give anything out. You can't, you know, print on coffee mugs and hand them out hoping people will do something, or give them a t-shirt. These are items we're not going to allow. Construction on buildings and facilities, also an unallowable. Breakfast. Look, food with meetings is something that you need continuity during the meeting. If you can prove that you have continuity for this, we're willing to listen to you. Beyond that, anything like that will be disallowed immediately. Of course, alcoholic beverages, we cannot support anyone going and serving alcohol beverages to get them to come to a meeting. So these are also on. The last one here is anything after the date of expiration. Please don't try to charge something that is beyond your 1 year mark, especially when you know that we're ending the program in 1 year. It has to be within the time frame allowed. So if you can go to the next slide, Sydney, please. Indirects. Okay, indirects are covered under 2 CFR 200 414. Basically, we look at a 30% rate at NIFA. That is our maximum number that we'll take for anything. So if you have a continued federal agency that basically is what your NICRA comes from, that may be a provisional or a final rate on that document, we'll use that as a part of our computation to figure out which is the lowest number that we can accept, and is it above 30%. If it's above 30%, you can only have 30% for this award. We actually spend quite a bit of time on this, so when you fill these out, please make sure you follow the information. We will look at it, we will cross-reference it. We're going to look in other sources to make sure that you're not trying to, you know, do something funny with math. Like, not like you are, but we have to do the work. It's our due diligence. The next slide, please, Sydney. In here, we also have, you can take no rate, of course, or you can take the de minimis 10% rate. Now, if you do decide to do de minimis, perfectly acceptable. We have no problem. We'll take any rate that you want to give us. We've provided a link within this, and as somebody's already asked, are you getting the slides? And we were told you were. You can go there. If not, you can contact myself or Holly, and we can send you this link right here for your de minimis paperwork. If you also need any other advice, you can refer to the link at the very bottom for NIFA indirects. There's a lot of helpful information there. A few links that will explain in detail how this works. And at this point, I'm going to be turning it over to Holly.
Hey everybody, I'm Holly Boyd in the Award Management Division. I'm going to talk to you about the organizational management information that's going to be required once a grantee has a successful application and it's sent down by Brent and Sydney. It comes to us and we need to verify and do a form of a risk assessment to make sure that the organization has a financial fitness to manage the award appropriately. So we follow the 2 CFR 200-302 and 303 in reviewing financial and internal controls. And you will be assigned a award management division grant specialist. It will be myself, it could be Stephen. We have a couple more people on our team that are all assigned to this program. And so it will be one of us that reaches out and provides a detailed list of what we're going to need. And it's a lot of it is included in your application, but pieces that are missing, we're going to request from you that you send them over. We try to give you about 7 to 10 days to come up with all that information because it can be a little, it's a pretty comprehensive amount of information. And there's a NIFA Form 666 that is going to be sent out when your grant management specialist makes contact with you. It is really to get confirmation on who the project director is, who the authorized representative is, who a financial person might be. In case we have questions along the way, we can reach out to that person. It needs to be signed by an authorized representative and then returned to us along with all the other documentation we're asking for. Some of that other information will include audits of financial reports or balance sheets. We really want to see some financials to make sure that everything is in order. We also want to know about your accounting system, your current federal awards. And if you have been sponsored by NIFA before, that would be helpful to know because you probably already have an organizational management file created, and we would just need to update that information so it's a little less time consuming on your parts. But we want to talk about policies and procedures and any other questions. And sometimes it takes a little bit of back and forth. Sometimes it takes a meeting if there's some confusion in there, and we're happy to work with you. For reporting, there's a couple different reporting systems. Well, there's one reporting system, it's Report. You're going to start your project initiation in there. When you are given your award, that funding will be withheld if you do not complete that project initiation report. So we go in and we check the report system. Once that is completed, it provides us with a number that we use to document, and then we can release funds to you. So sometimes there might be an IT glitch or something along those lines where we have to withhold that funding, but no worries, we'll get it fixed with you. You're gonna get in there, you're gonna get that project initiation going, and then we're gonna release the funds, and it happens really quick after. It takes maybe a day, possibly 2. Then there's also the annual technical progress reports that are due through the report system. And every year on February 1st, you have to do a report financial report. These are, they send you out triggers and reminders that these are coming due, so it won't blindside you. But additionally, you're gonna need to reply or provide a SF-425 annual financial report, and that's just gonna come straight to our awards inbox, and then one of us will handle it if we have questions, or you have concerns, or you note something on it, we'll get in touch with you, but we process those pretty darn quick too. And then additionally, there's a final financial report. The final SF-425 comes in the same way, just through our awards inbox, but it is due 120 days following the expiration date of the award, or if you decide to relinquish your award, or if you finish your project early, we ask that when you're done with that period of performance, that it's in within 120 days so that we can close out that award, and we will work directly with you and the authorized representative and your financial person in the closeout process in case funds need to be returned, or if it's a really simple closeout, it just goes really quickly. But we're always available to help in those situations as well. This is my contact information and Stephen's. Like I said, there's a couple more people on our team that will be in touch that you might get assigned to, but any of us can help you. So feel free to reach out anytime.
With that, we're in question period 2. And so Sydney, if you don't mind reading questions, and then Holly and Steve can handle those, and others, as you have them, please type them in.
Yes, their question that I'm seeing is, will purchasing and providing gun locks be allowed?
If it supports the scope of work, then yes. If we don't see it listed anywhere in the application and then it comes in on the budget side and we're like, why would you need that? We might reach out with a question and some clarification.
Okay. The next question that I have here is, would the cost for renting space to house 100% FTEs funded on the grants be allowed?
It's the same answer. If it supports the scope of work, you would really have to show why getting a rental space for those people would be required for that program to be successful.
Okay. The next question that I have here is, does the authorized representative have to be from the SDA, or can it be the FRSAN regional lead?
Yeah, Brent, that might be more of a question that you can help with.
Can you ask that again, Sydney?
Oh, the question is the AOR. So do they have to be from the State Department, or can it be, say, one of the partners, the regional collaboration partners? Can they be in the AOR?
It really needs to be from the SDA.
Okay. Next question. Do bylaws and organization information need to be submitted for all project partners, like subawards?
The answer to that is no. We're just looking for the prime entities information. For subcontracts, if they're over 50% of your funded amount, if they're over $250,000 of the $500,000 award, we're going to ask that all subcontracts have their own budget, their own justification, and a letter of collaboration from the subawardee.
Okay. Next question I see here. Is it allowable to pass through funds to support and maintain existing rural and farm stress hotlines?
Yes.
Next question. Lack of insurance for farmers is a big stressor. Would a program to help get health insurance for farmers be eligible?
And Holly, you can help, but I think education about health insurance is certainly allowable. And I think Holly answered the question, if there's potentially like travel needed to get somebody enrolled, that may also be allowable, but not paying for health insurance itself, if I'm understanding the question correctly.
Okay. Next question I have here. If we have an ASAP account from a USDA agency other than NIFA, will that work, or do we need a NIFA specific ASAP account?
That is a really good question. It assigns you an ASAP account number when we do the new awards. So you will probably have your own NIFA ASAP account number based on this specific award.
Next question. Could you please review what you said about no cost extensions and that term?
Sure. We want you to do a 1-year period of performance from 9/1/21 to 8/31/22. When you're issued an agreement face sheet, you'll also have a link to terms and conditions associated with your award. And as part of that, the State Department of Ag will be able to request a 12-month no-cost extension. Again, if the public health emergency has not been declared ended at that point, then the terms and conditions will still apply, and up to an additional 12 months, which would take the end of the period of performance to 8/31/23.
All right. The next question I have here is, can you talk about indirect rates for subawardees?
Certainly. Some contracts are allowed to use whatever their negotiated rate is. They should be honored in the rate that they have, and you need to build that into your budget. So if their indirects are very, very high, it might mean that the prime institution is going to have to take a lesser amount so that 30% TFFA limit is not breached.
All right, there are no other questions at this time.
I encourage folks as we move through this third and final segment of the presentation today, if you have additional questions, go ahead and type them in the chat as we're talking, and we'll take those in the order that were received so we can wrap up here and get you all out in time. We know the East Coast folks are already after their 5 o'clock hours. So this is probably not going to apply this first one, but we've got it there just in case. If you're not registered with grants.gov, we expect you are, but it does take quite a bit of time. And so in the outside chance you're not, go ahead and start that parallel to working on developing the state plan response to the proposal. Similarly, with your computer, you just got to make sure it's PDF equipped to get it everything uploaded. Again, probably is not a problem for folks here, but we have had issues in the past. Read the request for applications. You know, again, they can look complicated, but the more you familiarize yourself with them, the easier they are to interpret. Here is what the grants.gov page looks like. In the RFA, you have the EXCA number. I'm pointing to it, but you probably can't see my cursor, 008318. That's what you drop that into the opportunity. It loads this page, and then next slide. You click on preview to actually download the application package. And again, up above in the red button is where you would go through the apply to actually get to do the formal application. But start with downloading the app package first. So reminder again, this is where we've simplified the requirement on the project narrative, but these other pieces are equally important, and they all need to be submitted as PDF attachments for them to get into our system for review. So submit all information that's requested in the RFA, read and follow all the instructions, and specifically those to the FRSAN-SDA. Next. I put this back in to remind folks that the project narrative is your state plan. So when I know you've submitted others and you'll write out a lengthy document. Here we're asking you to keep it simple. We're going to have 56 of these to review if everybody submits. We want to have something consistent that we can look at across all of the applications, and also where we can identify what the category and suites of services that are being offered across the entire country and the territories. So this is going to help us out on this end and give us a bigger picture of what's being offered nationwide. And also then it's going to help us to identify who those partners are. And if we've got gap areas, to be able to identify those and point those out, come back to you later with that information. Next. Some of the other attachments that you can include are the bibliography and references that support your work. As we talked about, commitment and pledge letters. Also, those subcontract letters of commitment, those are really key. If you list it in your narrative that somebody is going to do something and you're committing funding for it, then we don't see a letter of commitment from them, then that's gonna create some problems in the review. So make sure that those align. In this case, you're likely not to need a fiscal agent. That's typically for our non-governmental organizations that may not have 501c3 established. Stephen already talked about the indirect cost rate agreement. Include that if you have it. And highlighted here, we're not asking for you to include other appendices besides what is required. So if you've got a lengthy history of working in this space and you want to tell us all about it, then send me an email, attach it in an email, give me a call, but do not include it in the RFA package. The senior key person personnel, you also are going to need to include a Biosketch for each one of those individuals. So if you've got more than one, that does not mean for your subawards. So that might mean if you've got a dedicated program and a person who's on staff within your SDA that's going to be leading up this effort, that's the person that we would need to see their Biosketch We'll use that to judge their qualification, and also for them then to identify what their current and pending support, meaning how much time they're contributing to this particular project and alongside how much other time they've got committed. So we can ensure that they're being able to provide the leadership to be able to bring these deliverables to completion. In addition, a conflict of interest should be included for each senior person that's included on the proposal. Additional forms, we've talked about the budget and the budget justification. In addition, Holly mentioned the need for subaward budgets. And in this particular instance, there's some directions there about saving the form, then completing it and attaching each budget and budget justification. The supplemental information form codes internally for us where this is going to be categorized. And for us, this program sits within our Institute of Youth, Family, and Community. I see our division director, Suzanne Sluka, is on, and she also brings her greetings and well wishes for the work that you're doing, and looks forward to collaborating with you on this project. And then also the program name, well, we've got it listed there. Thank you. Next slide. The application also requires a data management plan. And in this case, we want you to demonstrate how you're going to manage and disseminate any data that is generated by the project. There's specific information on our website, and this link is included here. And so we'll get these slides out as we mentioned previously, along with the recording. You can also just do a search NIFA data management plan to get that immediately, and include that then so that we have that understanding. We're also able to get a sense of how folks may be doing that differently when we start to analyze some of the reporting. Next. All right, so the proposals are due in advance of the 15 June deadline. You can resubmit if you put it in on the 14th and then realize you left out one of those all-important subaward letters. Then you can resubmit. We will take the proposal with the latest timestamp that was submitted in advance of the 5 p.m. Eastern time deadline. So I've not said it till now, I don't think, but we almost always have late submissions. And it's because folks are well-intentioned and they're trying to make their proposal absolutely perfect and waiting up to the last minute. And then they encounter some technological glitch, the power goes out, you name it, we've heard it. And in very, very rare instances, can we accept applications after the deadline. So don't be that person sending the email to me or calling me up, and because it makes me feel helpless, and instead submit a few days early and get through it, and then rest easy knowing that you've got it in, and then it's coming into us for the review process. So again, work with your neighbors, do what you got to get them in early, so that we're not going to look at them before 15 June. So you do have the confidence that if you find something after the fact that you want to correct, you can still submit in advance of that deadline. But you also got a fallback, you got a proposal in place. And just as another reminder, somebody asked what's one of the other biggest challenges. It's when documents are submitted in non-PDF format. So sometimes someone will send their Biosketch as a Word doc, and then someone will not convert it to a PDF. It cannot get through our system. So it gets rejected, and then the proposal gets moved forward and missing that key piece of documentation. Same thing, a spreadsheet as an Excel document, we can't get it. PowerPoint slide, we can't get it. So PDFs is the only option. Remember that, please. Next. All right, so once you do submit, you'll get a confirmation email receipt to the AOR, and then a second one indicating validation or rejection by grants.gov. Obviously, if it's a rejection, then you're going to have to troubleshoot it with grants.gov, and that's why, start earlier than you might have normally planned, so that you can be sure that you get that third one, that it's been passed on to NIFA. Once it comes to us, then we do an internal technical review to ensure it meets the eligibility requirements of the RFA. So you'll get one first confirming receipt. Everybody will get that universally. And then the second will be the one that says if it's been accepted or declined for review. we're hoping for 100% acceptance based upon the expectations for this RFA. Next. All right. So we have gotten through the material that we wanted to present today. It looks like we're at 4:55. So let's take what questions we have, and then we'll be able to wrap up on our schedule. Sydney?
Yes, the first question I have here, as clarification, this program is separate from the existing NIFA programs and will not replace funding to the regions for this fiscal year.
That is correct, Beth. Thank you for that question. So this was funding that came in through the COVID relief package, and it specifically targeted the SDAs because of your on the ground connections to be able to contribute to addressing the stresses associated with the pandemic that producers may be experiencing. And so in this particular instance, it complements the existing work that the FRSAN network is doing. As I mentioned, the existing network is funded competitively from fiscal years 20 through 22. So in this year, they'll be on a continuation. Next year, they'll be on a continuation. This year's funding came through in the appropriations at the full authorization of 10 million. And our hope and expectation is that that will continue in fiscal year 22. This is a Farm Bill mandated program, so it will be up for reauthorization in fiscal year 23. So if that remains in the Farm Bill, and then Congress continues to appropriate the funding that is authorized, the network will stay in place.
All right, the next question I have here, is the subcontractor statement of work a specific document or does it have specific requirements?
In this particular instance, in your project narrative, you would reflect who that's going to be in the activity and who's responsible for the work. And then in your budget and budget narrative, you should have the associated entries and or language to reflect that subcontract. And then that letter of support should basically reflect the statement aligning with what you have described in the state plan. And so in that particular instance, let's use the example that we used at the outset. They're working with Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin Cooperative Extension to do 4 trainings in a 6-month period. And so the letter should basically state University of Wisconsin, then signed off on letterhead by their authorized organizational representative that they are committing to that work for that amount of funding. Holly, is there anything there that I may have missed?
No, you captured all of it. Thank you.
All right, next question I have here. You mentioned a 2-page plan. What needs to fit within that limit?
Okay, you're going to go back to the slide?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So this is what should fit. A 250-word abstract, those 5 bullet points there, the name of the state, the primary POC, the email address, the phone, the physical address. So if we do have to send something snail mail, we've got an address to reach the primary POC. And then this table can be dropped in and extended out based upon the number of activities that then add up to a total that is up to $500,000. So I would encourage in this particular instance, each state to request up to the full amount for the various suite of activities that are allowed. The reason for that is there's specific language in the appropriation that we cannot reallocate. We cannot exceed the amount of 500,000 per state. So, however, and I'll just have this exception noted, is that if somebody doesn't accept, only ask for say 250,000, and we have other states that do that, then we may have an instance where we could go back and potentially supplement somebody up to the $500,000 amount. But we want to avoid that if at all possible. We encourage you to request the full 500,000, and again, use this 2-page limit to simplify the process so that we can get those funds and you can get to work as quickly as possible.
All right, the next question I have here is there a preferred Biosketch template?
There's not. So we see full resume submissions sometimes, CVs. In this particular instance, it really can be a Biosketch, page, paragraph. Again, with the individual, their credentials, and especially what is important, how they're qualified to perform the work that's listed in the state plan, aligned with the statement of work.
Okay, next question. What are the expectations with regard to subawardee statements of work?
So I guess I'll try to answer that, and then you can, if I'm not answering it the way the question's intended, let me know. So the expectation is that they are going to align their letter with what's stated in the state plan. So in other words, that they're agreeing then that they're on the hook to perform the work that's listed, that you are offering to provide the funding for. Holly, can you help out?
Yeah, I think there was some confusion because it was listed as 2 line items. There was the letter of collaboration and a statement of work. Sometimes they're uploaded separately, back to back, and sometimes they're combined in that letter of collaboration. So as long as your letter of collaboration also includes a statement of work, you only need one.
Thank you.
All right, next question. Are there character limits for file names? For example, file names for PDF documents that are required to be uploaded?
Sydney, can you take that one?
The character limit, I'll have to get back to that. But for file names, can we just call it what it is? Project narrative.
Yeah, let's start with that. So project narrative, yeah, that'll work.
Or state plan, that's. Next question that I have here is, so the letter of commitment is also the subcontract statement of work. The attachment list made it seem like they are separate items.
Yeah, so thanks, Holly, just clarified that. They can be uploaded separately, but if the information is reflected, it can be a single document.
There are no other questions at this time.
Okay, so if you'll move to the next slide, Sydney. Then folks, if you want to take a short-term screenshot of this, grab up your phones, and that has our contact information in one place. If you haven't captured it previously. If you do have administrative questions during the RFA process, direct those to Holly and Steve, but do include Sydney and I on the CC line. We do like to keep a running tab of who's asking what, so that we can be alert, especially if it's something that is unclear. Looks like Suzanne has shared, thank you, in response to the previous question, that if we can limit file names to under 50 characters, then that will be satisfactory. So thank you for that. We appreciate everybody's time today. More importantly, we look forward to seeing your submission of your state plans, the partnerships that you put together, the work that you're going to be performing. We want to be as supportive and encouraging in that as possible, and we especially want to see the collaborations that result. What we're certainly cognizant of is the network already exists, and the fine work that you do is well established. This gives you an infusion of funds in a uncertain period of time when producers are facing just a number of challenges, and coming out of the pandemic, we want them to be part of the economic recovery, and the contributions that you'll provide through your work here in partnership with the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network is going to be essential in that regard. So thank you. Stay well, stay safe, get your vaccines, encourage everybody else to get their vaccines, and we'll look forward to reviewing your state plans. And Sydney, you can end the recording.